All right, so last time we talked about forms in HTML, and I show you different ways of collecting information from the user. We talked about the input controls, we talked about the selects, and we talked about the text area control. And as you can see on this site right now, they are using the same thing that we've talked about. The only difference there is just that they apply some CSS there to look like this. But behind the scene, this thing you are seeing here is still the same inputs that we talked about. So anytime you need something like this, it's only going to be input. But what type of input are you using? So it's going to be depending on whatever the information you are trying from the user, and as you can see from the code, what is going on there is the same input that we talked about. And as you can see, the type that is there is text, which means the user can type anything inside the box, whether it is number or it is symbol, it doesn't care. It will accept everything from you like that. And search, it will look for what matches the items that you place there. But you know that this thing not return a valid result because I don't think they have anything on their site that is related to that jargon. So this nonsense that I just type here. But the major thing here is that this box. So all these things beside it, those one can come in later on when you are dealing with CSS and JavaScript. Because now if I click on X, it's going to remove everything that I typed inside the box. And as you can see, the icon changed to another thing. So that's JavaScript, CSS, and HTML combined together to give you that functionality. But the only one we are focusing on right now is the HTML part, which is for us to be able to generate the input. And as you can see here too, this is another one where you can type, and if you look at this, you can type anything you want, and it's going to, filter the price based on whatever you put it as. You can search for something that is valid, for example, like a laptop now. So this is a valid search on their site, and as now you can filter their products based on the price. So what is the minimum price? What is the maximum price? And if you still look at it too, this is part of the form controls here. But this one now, the type is what we call radio. And what is the radio doing there? So we use radio anytime you have multiple options, but only one the user can pick. So anytime you're using radio, it means this from the list of this option, only one that you can pick there. It's either this one or this one or this one, but not uh, all of them together or two of the item on the list together. You can't pick it the stuff. It's only one that you can select at a time. But if you now want the user to be able to pick multiple options from the list, that's where this one comes in, which is known as checkbox. So we call this one checkbox and we call this one radio. And how do you generate them? So we've talked about how you can generate each one of them there. So when you're talking about checkbox, the input, then you give it the type of checkbox. And when you're dealing with radio, then you are going to give it the control then, which is the input, but the type is going to be radio instead of a checkbox. So this is checkbox and this is radio. And when do you use this one? The time you use it is when you have multiple options like this, but only one can be selected. This one, the time you use it, you have multiple options. The user can pick none, can pick one, can pick two, can pick three, and so forth like that, depending on whatever the items that you are displaying to them. But yeah, is that you don't pick anything or you pick one. So that's really the radio. It's just like that's where the name is coming from. Like then you are tuning your radio, you can only have one station at a time. There's no way you'll be able to tune into two stations. Once you go to one station, then the other one will leave. So you can't have two stations at the same time, and that's where the name is coming from. There, like that. And apart from this one, we talked about select, which allows you to pick from the list of options too. But this one, instead of you displaying all the options to the user, you are going to present the box to them. And once they click on the box, it's going to bring out all the options that there is available to them. And they are only allowed to pick one, two by default. So when you're talking about select, this is the select here. And once you click on it, it's going to bring out this box for you to pick from the list of the option, and you can only select one. So you can use this or you can use radio. Both of them are going to do the same thing. But the advantage of this one is that you are not listing out all the content at once. So assuming you are dealing with country now, when you are filling form that deals with country, listing out the countries using this radio is going to take a lot of space. So instead of you doing that, then you use the select. And how do you create the select? So you are going to call the select tag. Then inside it, you pass all the options that you want to show to the user. So these are the list of options. Then it's that left for the user to pick from that list, which is going to show the first one by default, but the user can change it to any one of them. And if you don't want the user to see anything, all you have to do is to create the option with empty stuff, or the way you normally see it online, you see it select country. So what they are doing is they are creating one option there, and that option is having this particular text, and that's what is going to show, because the first one is what is always going to show, or it's going to pick by default. If we don't, or if the user doesn't pick that, it's not left for the user to pick this stuff. Or if you want, you can actually disable it if you don't want the user to even pick it up at all, because this is another attribute that we have on our controls there. Like that. It will be there, but the user cannot pick it. And you can do the same thing for any of these your controls. So if you don't want the user to interact, or you want to disable it so that you are telling them that no, this option is not available right now, maybe it's going to be available later on, or something has been there and it's not something that they can change, so you can use this attribute disable. And once you give any control disable there, it's going to disable that particular control. So now I give it to this drink of Fanta, and as you can see now, we cannot pick Fanta again because it has been disabled. So any control that have this disabled, the user cannot interact with them again. They will not be able to interact with the stuff. So going back up, this is our first name. Right now, we can change anything we want on it. So if I want to change anything here, I'll be able to do that. But once you give it this attribute disable, then you see that it will remove it, like you will not be able to interact with it again. It will be there, but you cannot do anything with it because it has been disabled. And that's what you only see online. And they want to show you, but you can't change it again because the time that you are doing registration, that's the only time you can do it. And once you are done with registration, after that, you cannot change anything again. You'll be seeing it, but you will not be able to do anything with the stuff because it has been disabled there. And that's what this is the attribute that we added to the stuff anytime you want to disable any of the controls there. And the last control that we talked about is this text area, which allows you to collect information that needs to span multiple lines. So the time you'll be using this one is when you want to collect information, but that information can go to, like, it can span multiple lines, because all these your inputs controls, they only work with one line. Whatever you want to put inside them, it will never go to next line. It's always one line. But the information you want to collect, it's something that needs to span multiple lines so that they can see what is going on there. So you need to use text area. And as you can see on this side here, the contact us page, if you look at it, the first thing, the same input that you're using here is what is it. The difference between that one and this one is just the CSS. That is it. So the same input you are seeing here is still the same input that we are using on this page here. The difference is just the styling that we two are going to get there. And as you can see, the only thing that is being used here is input of type text for this, and for this one, the input is of type email. So because anytime you want to collect email, that's the input type that you always use. We have a lot of input type that you can use. So you have the radio, you have the dates, and a lot of them. And if you look at it now, the type here now has been specified as an email. That's how the browser is able to know, oh, since this one is email, let me just suggest some of these email that we used in the previous form that you've worked with there. See, because all these browsers, so they are smart. Based on the label and the type of the input you are putting in, they know what to give you as the fill option. As you can see here, like that. So it will fill all this information based on what I've used before for a particular form, like that. So it knows that this is the first name, the last name, the email, but I've not filled anything. But if you look at this one now, this is now the text area, because Here now we want to collect message, and we know that the message is supposed to, wrap to another line, not that it will just be on one line. And that's the reason why you see that this side now is now using text area instead of using the normal input. So text area is what you use anytime you need to collect information that needs to span multiple line there. For example, here, let me just go back to this place. So let me copy some text from here and go back to that page and paste it inside the box here. And as you can see, the content is going to span multiple across the line, not that it will just go to one line. But if I do it for this one, you see that everything will just be on one line, which is not readable when you are dealing with a long text. So when you be using inputs is when you are collecting short information there. But anytime the information needs to span multiple line, just go with the text here. And if the option or the information you want to collect, you already have the option and you want them to select from the stuff there. So it's less for you to pick your select, or you pick radio, or you pick checkbox, depending on the type of the information and how bulky is the option. So if the option is really much like country now, you have to go with the select, because that one it's compact. So the user will not see everything at once until they click on the box. But if it is just something that is simple like gender or something like that, then you can quickly use the radio for that. And as you can see on this Facebook sign up page, what they are using for their stuff, as you can see, they are using radio for it. But for all these options here, you see that this thing is really long, so they are using the select for it. So anything that is really long, you don't use radio, because now imagine that you are listening out all these years from 1905 to 2004 and you're using radio. It's going to take a lot of space there. I like that. So this one is compact and it makes it easier. So all this one now, as you can see, they are normal inputs of type text. Then you have your select, you have the radio, you have the type of password, and you have your email like that. And from there, you have the button to sign up like that. So this is what we talked about at the last class there. So today, we are going to continue from there by talking about some of these grouping elements that we have in HTML. So, and these grouping elements, they are not really doing any styling. All the elements we have been talking about before, they will give you visual representation on the screen. But all these elements here, they don't really give you any visual stuff. They are just there to group your element together. And the time you start seeing their power is when you started dealing with CSS, because that's where the power is going to come out there. And if you look at it on the page, Facebook is using it already, because everything you are going to do on your site, most of them you are going to group them together. For example, here now, if you look at this Facebook, there is this logo group at the top here, because it's standing on its own. And again, you see now everything inside this box too, they are grouped together. This is another group. But inside this group too, we have some other groups there. For example, like this top section here, this is another group inside this box. And apart from this here, if you look at all this one too, these two are grouped together. That's the reason why you can see them side by side. And if you look at this one too, they are grouped together. The same thing here too, they are grouped together, or you can group them like this. It all depends on the CSS you want to use. If I want, I can do it like this for only this one, then continue from there for this one, and again to do the same thing for this one, or even combine all of them together. But the way you are doing it will determine how you are going to apply your CSS. And this one too, this is just a normal paragraph with link in front of it, because this is a link here. And the same thing too, this is another link on its own, which is having links. This is another paragraph which is having links for this side. And again, lastly, you have this button to sign up. As you can see, this is how you'll be doing your content. All those elements that we've talked about, you don't just use them anyhow. Most of them, you bring them together, or you combine them together to form the interface that you want to work on it. This is how Facebook arrange their own. If you go to another site, that is the same pattern that you always see there like that. So look at this site again. If you look at everything that is here too, is in a form of group. So if you look at this top here, see that there is a box here. And inside that box, you have the logo by this side, you have all this content at the center, and you have this button by this side. So it's in a group. Whatever you'll be doing later on, all these elements, the way you'll be using them, you group them together. And when you want to do all this thing, that's an element that we normally use to perform all these grouping. So what are you going to use to group all this one together? What are you going to use to group everything together, this line here, or other pages that you'll be working on? So how are you going to be grouping all the elements together? So we have these grouping elements that you can use. So let me create a page so that I can, so here we have group, so I have a grouping.html, and so generate the page content, so grouping in HTML. Most of this thing you will not see any changes from what you have been working with, but later on in CSS, that's where you started seeing them in action there, like that. So when you want to group element in your HTML, you've already seen some of them already from form. One of the one you know already is this form element that we talked about. So inside the form element, that's where you'll be putting all your form controls. So that's where you have your input and so forth like that. But apart from this form that is here, we have all these main grouping element, and the major one there is the most used one is this div here. So div here, we call it the division, just like the name. It's used to divide your content that you have on the page. So whatever you put inside this div now, that div is going to act as a container to the content, and any other content that is outside of it, they are not part of that group there like that. So I have this div, and please, this thing doesn't give us any visual stuff. By the time you get to the screen, it just seems as if you are typing a normal paragraph. Well, it's not paragraph. This thing is just a div element. So they don't give you any visual effects. They are just there to group things together. And if I go to this side and look at it, by this side now, maybe I'm putting the A tag here, and inside it we just put Google like this, just to represent that we are moving to Google. So http://www.google.com like this. So save. As you can see, what is happening? They are on a separate line because this A is not part of that group. So whatever I'm doing with this group later on, it will only affect what is inside that group. And that's what you see that all these sites they are using to group all their elements together. So expanding this in again, scroll down, can you see the way things are arranged? They are not together. So if you look at it, this one and everything here is in a group. But inside that group too, is subdivided into these four parts. So you have this group, you have this group, you have this group, and you have this group. So whatever you are doing with this group, there is no way to be affecting this one. This one too will not affect this, and this one too will not affect what is going on. But how do you group them? So we have all these grouping elements to perform this grouping in your HTML. And the most basic or the most used one here is this div. It's not the only one. We have other one too that you can use. But this div is the most used grouping element. There's no site you go to, then you are not going to see that element there. There is no site you go to, and if the site is doing something serious, so there is no way you go there and you will not see that element there. So can you see now that? Can you see where it's highlighted there? So it means that one now, that's the only place it's focused on. So that's the only thing is grouping. So this particular one, that's it. That is its group. So if you click on this one again, can you see it has its own group? What is inside it? And again, too, if you scroll down, you see that there is 1, 2 for this footer. So we normally use it to group the content that you have on your site together, because most of the things you have on the page, they are always in a group form. So all these things, they are by this side. All this one, they are on this side, and so forth like that. And that's the reason why you see that all these things they are together here. This is grouping too that is going on here. So when you want to build this kind of a search that is at the top here, you need to group them together, because it's not just one element that is there. There are multiple elements. So this is the group. Inside the group, you have the inputs that where you'll be typing. But apart from the inputs, you have these two
other stuff that is there. So through the CSS now, that's where you started applying the background that it's at the back of everything. But major thing is that there is a group there that holds everything. And whatever you are doing with that group, there is no way to be affecting the content here, or to be affecting other content that are not part of that group. And if you inspect this thing again, so if you check it again, you see that it's inside another group. For this, I only mention one of them, but it's not the only one. There's some other one that you can use. Can you see that it's still there? So there's no way you want to do grouping of some multiple elements together. You always use it to group your element are there. Even this card, if you look at this into, you see that this box now, it's like a group which is containing the image, the price, the title, and everything. Even though inside it too, there is some other subgroups, but that's the basic stuff. Because you always put one group inside another group, depending on the layout that you're working with. So if you inspect this one too now, inspect entire box, you can see that it's still going to be the same thing that they are using. But inside it, you can see there is another nested group, and that's what you always do there. You put one group, or you group your element together according to what you are trying to display on the screen. And the most used one, that's why you are seeing it everywhere. The most used one is this div. But it's not the only one that we have. We have some other one that are referred to as a semantic tag. So we have some other one known as a semantic tag. And what does this mean? What it means is that they are tag that you use to group other elements together, but they have more than just grouping. They have meaning according to their name. So there, which means on the page, on this page now, there are some common name that we use to give them. If you look at this green area here now, this is what we call the header part of the site. Why the one at the bottom side, if there is any one of them, is what we call the footer part of the site. Let me use this side because everything is here. So if you look at it now, everything you have at this top here is what we call header. And that's why you see that this div now, they are giving it this class header. So if you look at the entire content of the page, they are giving it this class. What is that class? I will talk more about it when we get to the CSS. Then. So this is one is being given this main content. And if you look at the last one, it's being given as this footer for the class. Instead of you doing it like this, we actually have some elements that are meant for that. They are used to structurally represent the content that we have on the page. And one of them here is this header. All these elements I'm mentioning here now, they are just behind the scene, but just that they are there to structurally represent the area of your site. So when you, even from the name, you already know what it's going to do, but you can use it anywhere you want. HTML will not complain. So just because you put header doesn't mean it to take the content to the top. Wherever you type it, that's where it's going to come out. But you should always use them as the appropriate place because that's what they are meant for. Like that. So we have this header. So header, it's not head though. It's not the same thing as this one. They're not the same thing. This one head is different from header. So apart from this one, we have main, which is what we use to represent the main content on the screen. So you use this one to group all the main content that you have on the page or any place that you know that that's the major content that the user wants to see. You always use this one to group them together. They are not giving you any styling. You'll be the one that will do all these things later on yourself. They are just there to group things together. They don't give you any styling like your H1 that you see that the text will be big like this, or your H2 or your P or your I. All this, they don't format anything for you. They are just there to group. They are not applying any style. So if you want them to do anything from you, they have to do it through the CSS there like that. And everything you always have on the site, they're always in group. Most of the things you'll see, they are always in site. They are grouped together. And if you want to do it now, because this is what you'll be doing later on when you see a site, you need to be able to decide, oh, okay, this is how the grouping is. So from here now, all these things, they're in this group. So inside this group, we have this logo, which you can use the image for that. Then, as you can see, all this one, they are grouped together, but they are on the right side. Everything goes to the right. That's why I'm grouping it like this. Again, you see that this is another group entirely. This is another group. entirely here. But inside this group too, you have another thing on the left and you have something here on the right. But inside this left too, you have your H1, and at the same time you have this your link, or this is a link, because anytime you go to the stuff, it will tell you whether it's a link or not. Once you go to anything like this, once it's showing the link at the bottom here, just know that this thing is a link. They just style it to look like button. It looks like button, but behind the scene what they're using is a tag. If you inspect it, you see that what is just here, you go to there and it's showing you the link down. Can you see that it is just a tag? What they did is CSS stuff, which is, because with CSS you can change anything to what you want there like that. So this is how it's being grouped. So inside this place too, you now have this group for this your input and this image, and again to this place you have another group here, and inside this group too, as you can see, you have each one of these items, and that's what you'll be doing. But you need to bring all of them together using CSS. Once you get CSS down, you see how we can do all this thing. But we need the HTML, because all these things that you are seeing on the page is HTML you are going to use to generate them before you start styling the stuff. But this is how you are going to be doing the grouping. And the way you do the grouping too is depending on how you are seeing the content. But almost all the content always have pattern that they follow. If you look at this one now, you see that it's the same thing as this. It's the same thing as this one. It's the same thing as this. The difference between them is the content. So which means all this in order you'll be doing them one by one. Like you'll be doing the styling one by one. Since you see that the styling is the same, you do it once, you now apply it on any one of them that looks the same. But how do you do that? That's where CSS will come in later on. Not that you do this one separate, you do this one separate, you do this one separate, you do no. If you look at it, the styling is the same thing. The difference is just the content that is inside. So which means you only have one style. All of them are using the same style. The difference between them is just the image and the text and the link, because once you click, it will do something for you. So that's the only thing that is different. But the layout will still be the same thing. Not that you keep doing it, you do this one, when you're done, you go and copy and paste to this one. No, you do no, that's not how we do it. When we get to CSS, you see how all these things are being done. But before we get to CSS, you need to know about how you can group all these elements together. Because if you don't group it correctly here, when you apply your CSS, it will not give you what you're expecting on the page. So what are the properties you can use to make sure that all this content they are 4:4 on this line? You're going to see everything when we get to CSS. You can talk to them, okay, per line, I want this thing to display 4:4, or when it is on small screen, I want it to display 2:2, or when it is on tablet, I want it to display 3:3. You'll be the one that will use CSS to talk to the element on the page, because this thing can behave in different way based on the screen. If you look at all this content now that is at this top, if I change this thing now, as you can see, they are not showing again. And look at the logo is down at the center, and this thing is down here because there is no space to show all of them. So what do? This one will come outside, and once you click, and as you can see, it's going to bring out this nonsense, and this is not the way it's supposed to be. Yeah, so they did not take care of that part. You can see this screen again. You see that there is no screen, it's only showing this sign up and login. But now if I reduce the screen again, you see that when it gets to a particular point, because it can accommodate it, you or the designer that will determine how things are going to be displayed at a particular breakpoint. And we have some common breakpoints that you can use, but it's CSS that is going to do all this magic. On small screen, as you can see, 2:2. But when you get to a particular screen, maybe 4:4. And again, too, you see that it's placing content side by side. It's not placing them side by side again. It's not placing them on top of each other, or even remove itself. It's not, yeah, it's there. So it's down by the down part. So this is all this CSS. But in order for you to be doing all these things, you need to group your element together so that you'll be able to use the necessary property from CSS to do all this magic. And what are the grouping elements you'll be using? So we have this div, which is the common one or the most used one. We have this header to represent the header part of your site or header of a particular area on the page that you are working on. So if you spell this one, if they're using correct tag, we should see all these semantics are being used there like that. So any site that is using correct is all these tags, and as you can see here, can you see there that they are using to represent that part. It's not that the thing will give you this styling, no. You will still be the one that will style it, but this is the element we normally use to represent or to structurally represent the header part of your site like that. If you go to the bottom part, you're going to see what we call footer. So everything here is what we call footer there. So you can use the that footer element now to group all of them together. So it's not a must that you use it. You can quickly use your div directly. It will still work. Major thing is CSS that is going to do all this work. All these elements will not do it for you, but they are just there to structurally represent the place. Not that they are going to give you any styling. They will not give you any styling. You will be the one that will style them, but they are always there to structurally represent. So we have this footer element to structurally represent the footer part of the site like that. Another one that we have there is known as nav. So we normally use this one to group all the links on the page together. So it's known as navigation. That's where the name is coming from. So this nav is what we normally use to group all the links that can take you from one page to another on the site. So any group of links that can take you, or which is navigation. So you are navigating from one page to another. So we normally use nav to group them, all those kind of links together like that. Let me bring it out. This that showing this one large. Let me go to this one when we get to CSS. That I'm bringing out, you know about them when we get to the CSS part like that. Do they use nav? I don't think so. They are just using div. So they do not use nav. What they use, can you see now they are using what we talked about, the list. So which means they are taking this in as a list, which is UL, or another list. You're having your airline. So each one of them is the airline, but they've removed all those that used to be there on this one. Because with CSS, you have the power to change all these elements to behave the way you want. And once you get to the CSS, you see how these things are being done. There is no magic there. It's just something that you are going to type, and this thing is going to bring them out for you like that. So when you want to do all these elements, or when you want to group all these elements together, you need to use some of these grouping elements. Each one of them have the time you are going, or the place you are going to use them, and that's the reason I'm bringing them out. So for now, we have this aside. So we have this aside, which is what we normally use to represent the content by the side of the page, but it's not the major content you want to see on that page, but they are always there to give extra information about the page that you are currently working on. And where this one is normally being used is for like advertisement that you normally see by the side of the site. It's not the major content on all these blogs. You only see that by the side there's some list of their previous posts or all these advertisement on their site. They are always placed by the left or by the right, but it's always by the side. They are not the major content on the page. So we normally use this thing to group them together. It's not a must. You can use div. Don't forget, div can be used anywhere. But when you are dealing with a standard site, you only see all these structural elements being used to represent all these places. So for the headers of the page, we normally use this. For the major content on the page, you use this. For the footer part of the site, which is the bottom part here, we use this footer. For all the links that is navigating the user from one place to another on the site, like this one, you can use nav to group them together like that. But it's not a must. You can use other elements like this div or the UL to represent lists and so forth like that. They will still work. You'll be the one that will use CSS to arrange them anyhow you want like that. So we have this aside. We have this section to represent to structurally represent different sections on the page. So if you look at it now, this is one section on the page. So look at it again. This is another section entirely, and this is another section again. It's on the same page, but we have different sections. So this is one section. If you look at it, this is another section too, entirely, because it's talking about something else entirely. Again, too, if you go to this side, as you can see, this section is talking about the mobile app, and if you continue like that, you keep seeing different sections. So if you want to group all these things together, you can use section. This is one section now. So this section now, we can use that section. Anything it's just there to structurally, can you see what they are using? Section. So different, so this is one section, this is another one entirely. So this is another one. You can use section to group them, but it's not a must. You can use what? You can use your div, because that one is general. So this section, you can use it to structurally group your content based on the section that you have on a page. Apart from this section, we have an article. I don't really use this one. The time you'll be using this one is when you are dealing with blogs. So that's where this one used to be used. So this article here, like that. So we have article like this. Blog item like this. So when you have a blog page and that your blog page is listing all your blog items, so you can use article to represent each one of the blog. I think they should have blog. This side should have blog. Let me see. They don't have blogs. No, I don't have blogs. I know that they have blogs. Remittance should have blogs. All right, so they are not showing their blogs, but we normally use article to represent each one of the items you have there, like that. This is not all, but these are just the major ones that you always see. Most especially, let me put out the one you always that we're going to be using a lot later on, like that. So all this one that I highlighted here, these are what we'll be using later on to structurally represent some content on our, or to group the content on our page. But the one we'll be using 20, like you always see me using a lot there, or what you always see on every site is always this div, because it's the one that we have before HTML5. Before HTML5, div is the only thing, the grouping element we have. All these one they are not there. They are just being introduced in HTML5 are there. So before HTML5, you know, we have 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's only div that is there at that time. And that's why you see most of the site, what you always see is div. So you always see a lot rather than seeing all this. But when you see all the new sites, you still be seeing all these header section or whatever stuff there. But any of these old sites, you don't see them there because they are being introduced in the new HTML5, which HTML5 is not that new because it has been there right from 2010 or so, like that. So it's not something that is new too, like that. So as you can see, this side now, all their grouping is just div, 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 div. Nobody is stopping you from using this. You can use it, it will still work, but it's always good that you use all these new tag to structurally represent the content on the page, because this is, you're not the only one that is reading the content on the page. There are some technology that are being developed that can read the site or interpret the site, and that's why you see that now that we even have AI, you know, they can just come to your site and read data behind the scene, not that the user will be the one that have to read everything. And once you use the correct tag, you can quickly build an application that can come to your site, pick the correct data that you need to pick, and do some stuff with it. They're not just using div everywhere like that. So you use the structure tag that is meant, but that doesn't mean div 2 will not work. You can see this site is live and they are making their money, and they are still using the div there. And everything that this thing is using on this page, I don't think there's anything that will not talked about here. Like everything they are using here, we've talked about them. The only thing that we've not talked about is how can we now design it like this. But all the elements they are using here, we've talked about them. You see the grouping that I just talked about now. So if you look at here now, grouping is going on there. So this is one group like this. This is another group. You can see whatever that is going on here, nothing concerned about this one with it. The styling will not affect each other because they are separate group, and that's what you always do. You group things and you place them or you lay out them to where you want them to appear. If you look at this one too, this is a grouping here, and if you look at this one too, this is another grouping. because there are multiple elements inside it. Again, this one too is a group on its own too. And inside that group, you have this image, you have the text. So the same thing is what is going on here. The difference between the two of them is now the background. This one have background, this one did not have background. It's still the same thing here too. So where you have the image, as you can see, so you have the image, you have the text. You have the image and you have the text. So now if you want to do it from your own code now, so what you do here is that we are going to have that group. So here now what we can do down here, so what we can do down here, where are you? So what we can do here down here is to create the group. So I'm going to be using div. So inside the div, I will have the image, and outside the image, I'm going to have the text. For example, here, laptop. You know, we can use the same image that they are using on this side by just copy the image link, then paste it here, and we have the same thing that is going on that side. So if you go to our own page too now, we should have something like that, but it's not going to look like your own because the styling is not there. So in order for it to work, we need to apply CSS to the content on the page, which is something I will be introducing tomorrow. So we are going to be shifting towards the CSS tomorrow. But before we get there, and I see some other element that we've not talked about, like table. But these days, I've never seen people using table like that. So that's why I want to focus on what we need rather than talking about everything and not focusing on the major stuff that you need. Because if you check almost all the sites we have been using to check, did you see anything like table? No. Table used to be there, like table is part of what you've been using, but it's not that common. Where you only see table is when you are dealing with dashboard, because that's where you see the list of data of what is going on the site. But when you're talking about the site in general, most of the time you don't see table there. You don't see table, you just see your text. As you can see now, you know what type of text they are using here, which is H1, because this is the major title on the page. So if you inspect it now, you see that what will be there is H. So it can be H1, H2, but I'm sure it's also the H1 because this is the major title on that page. And if you look at this one now, this is paragraph, because you look at it, you can't just use the button or its link until you go there. Once you go there and you see that the browser is showing you the link down here, but anytime you're on a link, it will always show you where that page or where that link is going to take you to. So once you move on top of it and it is showing you that link, just know that that thing is not button, it's a link. The same thing here too. If you come here, is it showing anything? As you can see that this one is not showing anything down here. So which means this one now is not a link there. But once you click on it, you see that it opens it another, is doing something else, which is opening the stuff in another file. We look at this page too. As you can see, what do you only see? Form. Most of the site these days is all about form because you need to get information from them. Based on what we've talked about or everything I've done, you can work on this page. The only thing that you will not be able to do there is now the styling. So that's the only thing that is left, and that's just what we want to move into that one tomorrow. We want to start with the styling so that we can bring everything together, and later on too we now include JavaScript. Because if you look at it now, after clicking on this box, I did not type anything. If you go outside, as you can see now, the color changed and it's showing the error that I did not do anything with that box. And if I try to submit to like this, it will not go because it's saying it that I've not typed anything that is required. But your own, even though you don't put anything inside the box, it will still submit. So we should be able to talk to the box or the form that first check everything that we're expecting from them. Are they being filled? So if it is filled, then do what you are supposed to do. But if it is not filled, then show the error message to them so that they know what is going on. And this is what we call the user experience now. Because you have the UI and you have the UX. UI is all about, okay, is this button going to be blue? Is it going to be color red? Or is it going to be whatever stuff? But UX is not the experience that the user is having on this your element. Is the experience okay or is the experience bad? Your design can look nice and the experience is going to be bad. So, and you have to have the two of them. So you have the UI, not that you have experience and the UI too is not there. You know, it will look somehow to the user, but you have to have the two of them. So yeah, these are the UI now, but the experience too are there, because this thing are communicating with you and you know what the thing is, not just showing red line. You are telling them that okay, the password is actually required, or what they type here is required, or even if I type something that is wrong, as you can see, the message is different now because this is not a valid email and like that. And once I put the correct stuff, this thing doesn't care whether it's correct email or real email or not. The only thing it care about is the pattern of the email, because then there's no way this thing will make sense, or this is a valid email, it's not valid, but the pattern is valid. That's the only thing, because you can't just say this email, there's no way you know that this email is valid or it's not valid, or something that is okay, but the pattern is what you look for. And once the pattern is okay, as you can see, it turns to green because everything is okay. But if you reload the stuff and check for the first time, you can see the line is different, the color is green, you've not done anything with it. So you don't, and if you click on next now, as you can see, it will check first, are you done filling all this in? You did not fill anything, so it will tell you which one that has been filled and the one that is not filled there, like that, which is that experience. And as you can see here, this is a link because it's showing the link down on the browser. So even though you know your normal link is supposed to have on, it's used to have underline and the color is blue, but once you have your CSS, you can do anything you want. This one too is linked too, but you see that the styling here is on the same styling. So you have the power to do anything you want to your link, and that's why you can't just judge based on what you see, because you have to check the code in order for you to see what they are using. But some of them you already know, like image now, you already know what you are going to use to generate this one, which is going to be the img tag. So if you inspect this one now, you see that what they are using is just the img tag. So there is nothing else you want to use to generate image. This is what you always use to generate image. Pass the source of where it's coming from, and as you can see, the type of linking they are doing the relative linking. You can see that this one is not showing any. The original image is that edu, or the original link is https whatever stuff, then slash. But the only thing that was being specified there is just slash asset, then slash whatever. So they did not specify everything. So since you don't specify everything, this browser will know that okay, this is relative. Can you see now? It will add the remaining stuff at the back based on the way you supply. But the type of relative they are using here is known as child one, not that one we talk about, which is the same folder. But tomorrow now, I'll be talking about other type of linking that we have for the relative. No, I said we have same folder, we have child folder, and we have parent folder. But the only thing that we talked about is just the same folder. But it's not all the time that you'll be using that one. Most of the time, what you always use is child folder, because you want to arrange all this your content in separate folders. Like the image will have its own folder, your HTML will have its own folder, but you need to link them together. And since they are not inside the same folder, you need to use another method to link them. And that's what is part of what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow when we are linking our CSS to the page there, like that. So most of the sites you are going to be seeing of everything that is there, or let's just say 80% of what is there, we've talked about the stuff already. The only thing that is just left now is to now style it to work. Like all this thing that you're seeing here is something you can do with CSS yourself, but this one is image. But you can actually place this content here through HTML and CSS later on. Like you can place any content anywhere you want on the page. For example, now if I go to this our site again, come here, can you see what is displayed here? This here is our image, but I put it somewhere at this edge here. So on your page later on, look at this one, as I'm showing that one up, see that thing is not leaving that side. All this thing is just CSS. Now you are going to see how to do them later. Look at this one here. See that it just hangs by one side. There. It's just CSS, like it's the image that I'm using here. And using that's the place you want. See what I'm doing here too. Just like this, we have the main content, and inside it, this is the first section, section. Like that. So that's how all these things arrange your section. I've talked about here already. So scroll down. You can see from here now.
like that. But inside this place, we can see that div 2 is there. So you cannot go away with it. But how many number of div you are going to use is depending on what you are placing. On the left, then style like a button, because that's what the designer wants. But it's going to be something that is taking you, because the designer will not tell you the element to use, but based on the experience and how that thing is going to work, you already know the tag to call. And those are the things we'll be doing later on when we are done with our basic CSS. We're going to be working on some of these design. We look at the element, okay, this is the tag we need to use to generate the element. Because it's not every time that, okay, because this thing look like button, oh, this is button. No, it depends on how this thing is going to work. If it's something that is going to carry action out, it's not a link. You don't need to be using a tag. You just use the button straightforward, just like the top here that we have like that. So that's how this thing works. Inside it, what it does here is just image. Anytime you see something like this, you know that it's image they are going to use to generate that. But with CSS now, everything that you have been working on, they are going to look like. And as you can see, as I'm scrolling, that stuff is following the stuff, like it's still like, look at it, I'm moving, but that top section is still there. That's CSS. And you're going to see how to do all this thing when we get to that section here, like that. So this one too is just normal this thing, but you can use or you can use image too, depending on whether what you're working on is GIF, image, or normal video. And I can see that what I'm using here is GIF, but no GIF can play like a video, but it's the image. What is just here is image. All these things at the back, they are just elements, which you are going to see how to style them through CSS. Everything here is just normal HTML that we've talked about. So nothing as you can see, this thing is just, this one is just your normal edit, it's just normal paragraph. But the styling is what makes it looks like this. So, and again too, no, let me skip this one because we're going to be using it later on. So we have this another grouping element known as the span. So you know, we talk about block element and inline element, right? So when you want to deal with inline grouping, that's where span comes in. So this one is used for inline grouping. So if you want your grouping, like you want to group some element together, but those elements are inline, and you still want other content to go side by side with it, then you have to use this span. Span is really useful when you want to do inline grouping. But all these other ones, like this header, section, main, nav, div, they are block grouping. And that's the reason why here you see that this A is going to another line. It can't stay beside it. It's always on its own separate line. So all these div, header, section, whatever stuff here, they are group element. But the span is useful when you want to do inline element. This is a sample here. For example, I have a paragraph here like this, and I have this Lorem 10 inside it. But inside this Lorem 10, all this one, their color is going to be different. Even though they are going to be on the same line, but their styling will be different. So what do? What you have to do is to create a grouping. And the grouping you need here is this inline grouping like this. So this span now, the span is here. But on the page, by the time you go back to that place, you see that everything is still on one line. So go back then, as you can see, everything is still on one line. But they are not the same. So these elements are not the same. Span is on its own, even though it's inside the P, but it's on its own. So which means whatever I want to do on this one, or whatever style I want to use it will only affect that group alone, whatever that is inside it. For example, here the color should be red. So if you save this one now and go back to the page, you see that it's only that part that is having color red, but the content is still going on the same line, because the grouping we are doing there is known as inline. They don't take up their own space. They take up whatever the space of the content that is inside it. But assuming you are using any of the grouping, any of the block group there, for example, like this div, which is the common one, like that, you see that this thing will go to its own line. So like that, because it's only standing
on its own. It doesn't stay on one line. Even though with CSS later on, you can return it back. But this is how it's going to be. And you know, some of your text, that's where you see what is going on here. So if you look at this side too, back, that some of the content, the color are not the same thing. Can you see this one now? Can you see that this one, they are on the same line. It's the same thing, but this one here, it have a different font, and again too, it have a different color. So if you want to do it now, there are different way of doing it. But here, inside your H1 or whatever stuff you are doing. So now this one doesn't mean it will go to its own line. No, it's still on that line, but you can do anything you want with this group. See, you never have what's inside. What's that?
Is it can you use span to create link?
No. Span is useful when you want to group element to them. But whatever that is inside it, it doesn't care about it. It can be link. It can be right now. I only put text, but that doesn't mean you cannot put link inside it. It's just there to group the content. That's a content. That content can be any element we'll talk about. It can be image. It can be link. It can be text. Right now I'm just using text, but it can be anything that you want to put inside it. But make sure that whatever you are putting inside it too is inline. If it's not inline, then that means that one too is going to create its own separate line. But you know that links is inline too. So if I put link inside it, it will work. So it doesn't care about what you are putting inside. But whatever you put inside, whatever you are doing on that group, it will affect everything that is inside it. So this one now is going to go to Google like this, which I'm going to have https www.google or .x.com like this, which is going to go to my X account like this. So X like that. So save. Then I don't want this one to be div again. It should be span. And it's something I want us to install now, because look at it now. I want to change this thing back to span, but here now I have to come here to do the same thing. So as I'm changing one element, the other one supposed to change for you, and that's why we need this extension here. And that extension is known as auto rename tag. So the extension is known as auto rename tag. So this extension, once you change any one of the tag, it will change the other one that is corresponding to that particular tag. So network, okay, yeah, as you can see, can you see the number of download? So it's something that you need to have as a developer when you are working with HTML, because you only change some of these elements sometime, and when you are changing it, you don't want, like, you might forgot to change the other one, and things will not start working again the way it's supposed to be. So this auto rename now, just install it, and once you install it, anytime you are changing one of the tags, it will change the other one for you. You don't need to change the first one, or you don't need to change the opening. You can change the closing too, but it will look at the opening one, and it will auto rename it for you like that. You can see automatically renamed paired HTML or XML tag in VS Code like that. So it will work. This is sample here. So if you change this A here now, it will be changing at the back straightforward. So whatever you do here, it will happen to this one. So if you do it at the end too, as you can see, it's happening at the top. So it doesn't need to happen for the first one. You can change any one of them. So if you change the opening tag, it will rename your closing tag. If you change the closing tag, it will rename your opening tag back. What's wrong with the network? And once the network is okay, you see that it will start working like this. But for now, let me just continue and rename this myself. So, but it's not good that you are doing it like this, because when later on we are going to have a lot of tags that looks alike. You now start, oh, is this one that I need to close? Even though VS Code will still help you, because any tags where it's starting from is going to have line. So this div is where it's starting from, and this is where it ends. So look at this P2. This is where it starts, and this is where it ends. But later on, when you are dealing with some code, you are going to see that there's a lot of them, and you don't want this thing to bombard you with the content. For example, here now, let me open another window with another project. I think I have the stuff here. Do I have any? Okay, which one do I have the stuff here? Let me see this footy. This is framework that we're going to be using later on like that. So this is JavaScript, HTML, and CSS combined together. So there's some crazy stuff that is going on here that you don't need to focus on because this is JavaScript stuff. It's when we talk about JavaScript, you know what all this bracket, what is async, what is const, and so forth like that are doing. But here too, there is still HTML. So where's our, let me see which one is, where's my components? So we have this alt tab, I have the custom button, external link. Let me see this, my input, as you can, yeah. Oh, no. This is not what I want to open. This is mobile app application. This is not web. So this is not it. Let me see. Because most of the work are on this system, so I don't really. And as you can see here, all right, we have the home page. This one too is just because we splitted things here. So all the HTML are not together in one page. We are splitting them based on what they are doing. And that's how you'll be doing things too later on, like that. But let me, this, I don't have all the content here. But when you see it, you see that there's a lot of HTML you are going to type to generate the content on the page. And when you are generating them, you are going to be using same element every time like that. Since you are using the same element, you need to be able to differentiate one from the other one like that. As you can see here, I have a lot of things that is going on. Most especially, where is that one? Sir? Where is that one? I think it's this. Yeah. So you can see that I'm using all these tag. So like all these header, the main, the div, and so forth like that. So you can see the header, the main, the div, the section, and so forth like that. I have a lot of them that I'm using like that. So let me bring that this main layout. As you can see, I have the aside. So I'm using aside. As you can see, I'm using section, header. So all of them you combine them. See that the header is not just for header part of your site. When you have different sections and that place is having its own kind of a header, so you can still use this header type. But div can be used anywhere. Like it can be used anywhere. Like that. This one is advanced stuff because it's not just using normal HTML. It's using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript together. So this is a framework that I'm using. But when you're using framework, as you can see, all the stuff we are talking about now, you still be using them. Just that it's more like an advanced part of it, not that because all this thing now you can't do it with normal HTML. What I'm doing, all these curly braces now, what that thing means that it will replace with the stuff that this thing is holding later on. Whatever the creating text is holding, that's what this thing will be replaced with. But you can't do with normal HTML. You have to type everything. But when you need that dynamic part, you need JavaScript before all those dynamic one will come. So yeah, I think this one is done. So now go back to the page, just rename anything that you want. So as you can see now, I removed the first one. See that the second one too has been removed, the closing one. So if I type span, you can see it will complete it. But depending on the speed of your typing, but sometimes when your speed, like the typing speed is more than what this thing can take, as you can see, it will just stop like that. So, but if you are doing it one by one, for example, S, P, A, N, as you can see that it works. But because my own speed, like I can quickly type that word like fast. So, but if your speed is not that much and the thing is not slowing down, you see that it will change. But sometimes it will hang. So you have to go and correct the stuff. But most of the time, you are typing slowly, then it will work. But if you are someone that can type this in fast, like that, so it can come in or even hang, depending on how fast you are with the code. So go back to the page that we are working on, and we should have the stuff. And as you can see now, I have the link inside the span. Now everything too is inside span. So there is a span inside span again. Because that's what you'll be doing. You'll be grouping things and you'll be putting them inside each other until you achieve that layout that you want. So once we get to CSS, or when we are talking about how to combine HTML and CSS together to build all these things so you see how to use them. And tomorrow now we are going to be jumping into our CSS. So tomorrow we talked about how we can include CSS, and after that we are going to be talking about selector. What is selector? You know about it tomorrow. And after selector, that's the only two things we are going to do tomorrow. How to include CSS, what is our selector, then you have an assignment on the selector. Then next week we're going to move into the unit. Then from the unit we'll start with the color property. From the color property we go to the background property. From the background property we go to the text properties, because if you look at this page now, there's some properties going, like there's some changes on the text that we are not doing. So if you go back to the side, you see that the way this text is being displayed is quite different from this text. So this is the text property. So there's a property that this thing is using that is different from this one. So we're going to talk about the text property like that. Apart from text property, we're going to be talking about display later on, because you want to display your or you want to arrange your element. Look at this here now. See that this content here is placed side by side with this one on desktop. And once this thing enter mobile, you see that if there is no space again, the way this thing is going to do is that it will move them. How is this in another page? So what this thing is going to do is that it's going to move them side by side. When it is on the small screen, let me use my emulator to emulate small screen there. So when the emulator, I'm talking about this emulator too when you get to the time that we need it. So here now, go to tablet, it's still side by side, but now go to small screen. Can you see now that things have been like this one too is not showing, because that's what you see, that all sites follow the same pattern. The difference is just the content that you have there or the styling that you are using. But most of the sites will follow the same pattern, because on the mobile, there's no way you can put everything together. What do? You hide the other one that are not very important, but when they now click on this one, it will now come outside to the user. So click, it goes back, click on this one, it's called. Then if I click on them, then it will take me to the page. And if it is on the desktop, you see that the display is different. On the mobile, the display too is different, because you don't want to put the content side by side on mobile. There is no space at all, so you have to put them on top of each other, not side by side there, like that. So, and as you can see, this image now is placed on top of this text. How can you do that? We talked about all this. That's a property where you can use to move something on top of another content. Because this is image. This thing that you are seeing now is image, but it's being moved on top of this stuff here, like that. And how do you do it? You are going to see how to a CSS property. If you look at this one too, you can see the background now is not clear. You are not seeing what is at the back. This is, so how do you do this one? When we are talking about background property, that's where you know how to do something like this, because you can't run away. Like, background is always here, and the background is what you always use to do. Again, to when the background is what we're going to use, we want to do something like this gradient stuff. So it's still background that you're going to use, because you can actually do it too. Instead of using image, you can do this thing yourself through CSS, like that. That's what if you look at this line too, so there is a line. This one is not image. It's something that you can do yourself, and it's a property in CSS which is known as border. So the border property is what you'll be using to do that. So if I expand this into the CSS part, you see that what is just going on there is the border stuff. Where are you? Where is the elements? Is there any other div? Now, so all this property, we're going to be talking about them. No, we can't talk about properties tomorrow. What we'll be talking about is, so you see, it is border. So the one that will generate. What is it going on here? What is it doing here? When we get to border, you know about the stuff. So that when you are reading the code, you already know what that thing will do on the page. So those are the stuff we need to do in CSS. So these 2 pixels is just talking about the thickness of that line. This is the color. That's why you see it showing orange. So and then this one, the solid is just the styling. So the solid is normal line. So if I want it to be dotted now, I can just remove this one and just say dotted like this. And as you can see, the style of the line is going to be different. And if I can increase it so that you see it to 6 pixels, you can see now that it's different from what is there before. So
But solid is just going to be normal line that will be here like that. So, and if I even want it to be two, what I can do is to use the style for double. So it all depends on what the design it's giving you. And you can see that I can change the style of any side, but it's not permanent. If you reload now, it will go back to its original side, our original back, because you did not change where the store where the thing is saved. You only change the one you are seeing on the browser. And once you reload, you go back to the way it used to be before. This one I can change anything on this side, but once you reload, everything will disappear. So that's how it works. So we'll be stopping here and we'll continue from there